Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so I guess we'll be starting with good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. Um, so we're going to be talking before we start the stream. We'd like to just talk about um, the design updates. So in the previous update, we mentioned that the stainless steel two plates will be updated, and also the dock is going to be all metal as well. And beyond that, we've also updated the electronics board to the new Octopus Pro Max board. The Raspberry Pi board as well has also been updated to the BigTech Pi board as well. It's a little bit more efficient. um, Also, we've updated the webcam, and something that's going to be posted in the update after this live stream is going to be the Z-axis bracket. So that bracket now, you see in the campaign, it's a 3D printed part with a aluminium bracket underneath it to support it. That's all going to be CNC'd aluminium now, and it's going to have an anti-backlash nut on it with an Oldham coupling as well. You'll see renders of that in the update right after the stream. Um, Next thing I wanted to talk about was shipping and taxes. So again, we're going to be going over this in the update after the stream as well. But essentially, we will be um, doing the taxes on our end. So that means instead of having to pay the shipping company and having to deal with uh, potentially uh, potential delays and also admin fees, we're going to be taking care of that and hopefully streamlining the shipping process for you guys. So that's all going to be taken care of after the campaign ends, and once shipping begins, and we're ready to take those orders, and we're able to then calculate how much those taxes are going to be for your region, for your country. Um, so yeah, let's just get into it. So there's a chat box. There should be a chat box underneath this stream where you can post your questions. So, first of all, no, we won't be seeing any live printing, unfortunately. The machine currently is still, we're actually doing a bit of work on it right now, so it's not in a state to be printing. Um, we're working towards getting it ready with the new parts, the stainless steel parts that we've got ordered in, and we're hoping to get it ready for the TCT show, which is also happening right here in our hometown of Birmingham, and that's on the 7th and 8th of June. If you're able to make it down, please do come down. We're booth number H60, I mean. So yeah, it'd be good to see you guys, and you can see the printer firsthand there. Okay. So yeah. So as far as right slicing software, yeah. So um, Kura is what we're using at the moment for our testing. It's what we've been using with our previous machines. But any slicer software that can put out G code and can handle multiple extruders will be compatible with the Proforge 4. So that's Process Slicer. Super Slicer is what we recommend because it works well with Clipper. Um, and we're going to be doing testing and releasing essentially a guide that should allow you to um, program the Proforge for your own slicer. It's super straightforward. So a lot of the tool changes, so essentially the code for the tool changing is all handled by firmware. The printer does that. All you need to do is enter in, just copy and paste 2 lines of code usually into the tool change um, box on your slicer software, and then you can just use it as normal. So have we decided what the 300K reward will be? No, not yet. So we've got a few ideas. People are suggesting, uh, people are putting forward their suggestions. I think in the end we'll probably just run a poll if we do reach it. I think there's only 2 days left now of the campaign. Hopefully we can reach it, and we'll decide we'll decide later and what that would be. Okay, so will you be implementing custom G codes or standard G codes only? So as far as G codes go, there will be some custom G codes available to use built into the firmware. So if you've used Clipper before, we'll have macros that can have those that you can use custom G codes with. But for the most part, it will just be standard G code. Um, yeah. So how noisy is the machine? So the machine, it depends how fast you print with it, really. You can print slowly and have it not make as much noise, or you can print at max tilt and it will make a bit of noise. The tool changing also has a servo on it, so that servo also makes a little bit of noise, which could be annoying, but um, that there's not much getting around that servo's noise. But again, it really does depend on how fast you print. We'll see if we can do some noise testing so we can get a decibel value for you guys. I think that would be a bit more helpful. But yeah, it does depend mostly on how fast you're printing. Okay. So I think, yeah, I think we had some comments on the Kickstarter as well asking what the build surface of the machine is. So the build surface of the machine is a powder coated PEI sheet. It's a spring steel flex plate, so it's removable, flexible. It's one of the standard ones that you probably experience in other 3D printers as well. Um, yeah, we're still figuring out whether it's going to be double-sided or not. There is a possibility where we could have a powder-coated side and a smooth side. Um, we're still figuring that out. Okay, so is TPU fully supported? Yeah, so TPU is fully supported. The extruder is direct drive, and we're using the Orbiter V2 as our extruder. The filament path is super constrained there, so there's no problem with flexibles. We've printed flexible TPU with it as well. You can see on the campaign that the plier print, the black part is all TPU there, and the red I think is PLA. And yeah, the machine had no problems handling TPU. You do just have to print a little bit slower with TPU. That's just the nature of the material. Um, but yeah, the machine can handle TPU just fine. Okay. Um, yeah. So if we have any more questions, please bring them in. We're here for the next hour, so um, yep. Will Prusa Slicer be the next slicer after Kura? Um, yeah, very likely. So Prusa Slicer, Super Slicer, the implementation there is really simple. We've had a look at it. It's literally just 2 lines of code that you need to add into the tool change G-code box. And the rest of the slicer you can just operate as you normally would. Um, with a super constrained extruder filament path and problems with filament tolerance as well there. It's not super constrained. It works pretty well. It's the Orbiter V2, and it's something that a lot of people in the community are already using and having great results with. It's one of the reasons why we chose it. We also had the Orbiter V1 installed in our previous Proforge 3. Again, had 0 problems with it, and super happy to have the V2 now, in the Proforge 4. Okay, Do you propose after the delivery some upgrade packages for new or upgraded features? So, post Kickstarter, we have got some things in the works. Um, so our biggest thing is an auto calibration tool. So at the moment, the best thing to use is the calibration camera, which works really, really well and is incredibly reliable, but does take time to calibrate the tool heads with. So with an auto calibration tool, it streamlines that process. We've got that in a concept stage right now. It's just a matter of implementing and testing, and it's something that will be coming over the next few months. Definitely before the end of the year, you will see that. And yeah, we're going to do our best to um, make that because the actual hardware isn't that expensive. We might even be able to ship out for free or have it with an option of speedier shipping where you can pay for faster shipping. Um, but yeah, that's definitely in the works. Um, right, so a stainless steel spacer instead of the brass spacer inside the hot end. So the thing about going with stainless steel is that it doesn't transfer as much heat into the filament. So it can reduce filament flow. The problem also is with stainless steel is that it can cause jams, something that brass doesn't have as much of an issue with. Um, the thing to also remember with the spacer, with the insert inside the heater block, is that even if it does wear, it's not going to affect printing quality if you've got a wear-resistant nozzle on it, because the issue with the nozzle not being wear resistant and pushing a coarse filament through it is that you end up opening up that nozzle diameter, opening up that nozzle orifice. But with the spacer, even if some of that is worn away, it's not going to make a difference to your actual print. The brass spacer also is something that's super inexpensive. We probably will include spares, plenty of spares with the printer if we don't go down the stainless steel route. But right now, we're just a little bit hesitant to go down the stainless steel route because, again, it can reduce flow and potentially cause jamming as well. Um, but we'll keep you updated on that after doing some tests with it. We may find that it works perfectly well, but again, there's a little bit of hesitancy there because we know that the brass works well and it's what we've tested. Okay, yeah, Prusa slicer, super slicer, you'll be able to paint colors onto any models with the slicer. Yeah, so that is one of the big advantages of that slicer for sure. And yeah, the Proforge 4 should be able to work with that slicer, no problem. Yep. Is the Z-rail a simple metal bar or is it reinforced? The Z-rail is a MGN12 stainless steel rail. It's incredibly stiff, incredibly strong. It doesn't need any reinforcing. If anything, it's probably reinforcing the aluminium profile more than it need it needing reinforcing. Um, the beacons. Right, so with the beacon, so we've been having chats with the guys over at Annex Engineering about the beacon bed scanner. So it is compatible with Clipper. An issue may arise with using it with the Big Tree Tech Pi board. Now they did mention that it sometimes does struggle if you've got multiple boards connected to that Pi board. We've only got the one board connected and a USB camera as well on that USB hub on the Pi. So we're gonna have to do a bit of testing there before we can say that the beacon definitely works, but it most likely will with fairly confident that it will work just fine with our setup, and it will just end up being a mount that you can 3D print um, and replace the probe with, and just add the beacon, wire it down to the board, and you should be good to go. And then make the updates to Clipper, of course, and you should be good to go there. And hopefully, we can release a guide there as well because the beacon it's a fantastic scanner, and yeah, it would be a great addition to the Proforge 4 for certain. Um, right. So the printer seems the print yeah, so the printer, so it's not actually the printer itself that's moving, it's actually our table. We've got it, mounted on we've got it sitting on, just a regular office desk. So when you see in the video the printer moving, the printer itself is completely solid. It's just that the table underneath is starting to shake a bit at those high speeds. So I guess the more solid your table is, the less it would shake. Also, the feet on the Proforge 4 on the prototype they're all actually 3D printed ABS. On the final version, there'll be a silicon rubber, so they should absorb a lot more of those vibrations. That's something else I should also mention there. The feet of the printer will be a silicon rubber on the final version. Okay. Yeah, so so my name's Adeel. I'm the designer of the Proforge 4 and also the founder of MakerTech. I got into 3D printing when I was at university. I ended up sort of dropping out of university actually. I was studying mechanical engineering at Bristol, and I wanted to do this full time. For me, it started off as a hobby that then slowly became a business. I love making 3D printers. I love designing them, and I love the business side of things as well. And putting them on Kickstarter and um, seeing it grow, seeing the company grow has been incredibly fulfilling for me personally. And that is more or less where we are today. I'm mostly self-taught in the world of 3D printing as well, but this is this is what I do full time, and it's what I'm incredibly passionate about, and hope to carry on doing for as long as I can, really. Okay. um, C calibration for different tool heads and for dealing with minor height changes when changing nozzles. So, as far as so after calibrating the print heads for the first time, you'll find that they remain very reliable actually. You won't have to go back and calibrate unless you actually change a nozzle. But again, having four different nozzles, you're way less likely to be changing nozzles in the first place. Um, if you want a different what I would recommend doing is setting up each tool head with different nozzles. So if you want to switch a nozzle, you don't necessarily have to switch a nozzle, but rather switch a tool head instead, and that way everything can stay calibrated. Um, if you do end up changing a nozzle, so the way the calibration works is that it's so so there are four tool heads in total. The first tool head is what's offset from the bed, and then all the other tool heads are then offset from that first tool head. So changing the other three tool heads is a better way of um, than changing the nozzle on the other three tool heads is a much better way of going about switching nozzles instead of changing the nozzle on the first tool head. You want the first tool head to be your primary nozzle, and ideally not tweak that, and keep the rest the same. Keep the rest as your swappable ones. Um, so again, with the auto calibration, that's going to be a lot easier going forward. But at the moment, that calibration is manual. So either with the camera for the X and Y, and then using the wizard in Clipper to then go through and use a piece of paper or a feeler gauge to to get that offset from the bed. Okay. So with the calibration camera is the calibration camera, the way that it works is you place that camera on the print platform. You then bring over your first tool head, so the nozzle lines up with the center of that camera, and there's a software that goes with it that you then just click next. And you click through it, and you tell it, okay, I've got my first tool head on there now, and then you park that tool head, bring the next tool head over, and then jog it across to where the center of there's like an overlay over the camera image. There's a video of this actually on an Ember Prototypes website showing you how this calibration works. But essentially, you then just move that second tool head over to the center uh, of that camera's position, and then you type in your XY value into their software, and then you dock that tool head, select the next tool head, do the same, dock that tool head, select the next tool head, and do the same again, and then it spits out a bunch of numbers that you can then enter in as your offsets for the X and Y, and it's insanely accurate. Actually, it's accurate down to 10 microns, I think, because you can literally see as you jog the print head along, the very tip of the nozzle move, and it's incredibly accurate. Um, right, so yeah, do you have a way to compensate for vibrations during printing, resonance testing, and compensation? Yep. So the printer comes with an ADXL board. So the way that works is you plug the board in, and you can then get um, your input shaper values from there. Once you have those values, you plug them into Clipper, and you should be good to go from there. You shouldn't need to change those values unless you adjust your belts, which shouldn't be often, uh, or if you decide to replace the entire hot end with something else, with a third-party hot end or change the extruder, you would have to run that process over again. But it is, for the most part, for most people, it will be a one-time process where once you've got those values and you've entered them in for your printer, it's very unlikely you'd be changing those numbers. Right. So, which thing is so yeah, so quite a few people have been asking, can we increase the y-axis? Can we increase the build volume in the y direction? Um, Fortunately not. It would increase costs way too much. It would also push us into the next shipping bracket as well, which would again increase costs considerably. If we wanted to go bigger, we'd probably just go bigger, just because that's a little bit more efficient. Um, Again, also going bigger then adds more distance on the gantry, and making sure that that gantry is straight and square becomes a lot more difficult. Going bigger, we'd probably want to increase the thickness of the extrusions. There are many things that we'd want to do to go bigger, even though it is only 10, 20 millimeters. It does push costs quite high, and then it also comes down to um, how big is too big? I mean, at the moment, it fills a normal office desk's depth. It's quite a big machine already. Making it any bigger may also make it unpractical for a lot of people too. So yeah, if we wanted to go bigger, we'd just go with we'd rather just redesign the machine to be a very big machine. But we're pretty happy with the build volume and size of the machine already, and we've hit the first stretch goal as well. So the machine, from the prototype that you see, the final version is going to be taller, and yeah, so the total build volume is going to be 300 by 400 in the Z axis in total. Yep. So what nozzle size will this printer ship with? So we're going to have a full set of brass and steel nozzles that will ship with each print head. And the sizes, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think they're 0.3 3.4, point 0.6, and point 0.8. Um, but it mentions it in the Kickstarter, I think. And but yeah, you won't be short of nozzles. That's for certain. Um, I don't want to move the cat. So can we see the machine? I don't want to move the camera around because I don't know what I've got out. I don't because it is live right now. But we will be putting some more content out as soon as we can. Also, we've going to be presenting the machine again at TCT on the 6th, on the 7th and 8th of June. If you're in Birmingham, definitely recommend. If you're in the UK at least, we definitely recommend coming down and taking a look at the printer. We also will be making some videos and creating some content while we're there as well. So we'll be sharing that with you guys as well. Okay. Final price with full tool heads. Yeah, you can take a look on the Kickstarter for the final pricing. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's £400 extra for all four tool heads, and I think there's some early birds still left at £1,099. Going to be a little bit more in dollars, but yeah, the pricing is all on the Kickstarter. You just have to click on the back button on the back of this reward, and it will take you to the next page where you'll be able to add on those add-ons, and the pricing will all be there. Okay, auto calibration, upgrade, and detail really correct. Okay, so yeah, the auto calibration tool. So the way that tool will work is it will be a separate tool that you can then plug into the printer. There'll be a port where you can plug it in, place it on the print bed, and then run through the calibration script. And what it will do essentially is it will bring over the nozzle, bring over the print head, and bring the nozzle right up to the tool, right up to the calibration tool, and um, the way it will work is it will push down on the top of the calibration tool, and that will trigger a switch to let it know that that's the Z that's the Z axis now triggered, and then it will move to the side of the calibration tool and then bump into it on the left, right, back, and front of it, and that way we'll be able to get the X and Y values, and then it'll dock the tool head, bring the next tool head over, repeat that process, and repeat that again for the remaining tool heads, and then once it has all that information, it will then offset that from the values it got from the first tool head, and that's essentially how it will work. Again, a lot quicker than the camera, but it will take us a little while to develop that. There's a little bit more work that needs to go into that before it's ready. But again, it definitely is coming. It definitely will be ready by the end of the year, if not much sooner actually. Yeah. So um, auto level uses a super pinder. So it's not a super pinder. The probe itself is an inductive probe. We've been using that probe on our Proforge 3, 3.5 without any issue. It works incredibly well. For speed, the way we've set it up is it probes 4 points on the bed, and then the bed adjusts itself so that it's parallel with the gantry, with the nozzle. And we get great results from that. And a lot of that is because the Mic 6 platform, the tooling plate, the print platform is flat to 0.1 millimeters. So you get a really consistent first layer across the entire bed. And I think there are some images of us doing like a really big print across the entire bed, and just having a great first layer there. So yeah, it's really nothing to worry about with regards to that. The first layer is great, and the platform is again incredibly flat, and it works really well with that probe. Um, you can add also, if you wanted to, a mesh to that, and of course, people are talking about the beacon probe having a super detailed mesh if you wish to. Okay, so regarding bed leveling, is there a way to set up more than 4 points? Yep. So there is. If you want to, you can run through that script. It's not difficult at all. It's just one line of G code, and you enter that in. It runs through and probes as many points as you want. You can increase that number, decrease that number, and you can then save that to the printer so that the next time you come along to print, you can print along that mesh if you wanted to. The only reason we say only probe 4 points at the start of the print and let that bed be mechanically flat is because instead of having um, multiple points across the bed and the printer then having to go up and down across whatever bumps it does detect, it's so much cleaner and better, especially when you're printing fast, to have just a mechanically flat bed as possible, rather than relying on software to create a mesh for then the bed to go up and down to follow that mesh. That's why we're a little bit more um, focused on just having a really good bed in the first place that's as flat as it can be, so you can get that flat layer mechanically rather than through software, rather than through having that bed bouncing up and down on your first layer or multiple layers going up a print. Yep. Uh, yeah. Yeah, what gave you the idea for this printer takes inspiration from the E3D tool changer, Voron, RatRig. Um, yeah, so it's a bit of a mixture of all those printers. The tool changer obviously is inspired by the E3D tool changer, and I think the plates from the E3D tool changer should even be compatible with the Proforge 4. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% certain there. But it is a very similar design. The only changes we made were with the servo. So the E3D servo is geared. Um, it uses two gears. We've just gone for like a really beefy servo. So the torque on it is around 40 kilograms. It's completely overkill, but it works incredibly well. It's super reliable, and you're not having to deal with gearing or with grease or anything. It's a direct, I guess you call it, it's a direct drive tool changing mechanism. Yeah, and then again with the Vorons and the Rat Rigs, definitely inspiration. We definitely took inspiration from both of those machines. Um, and yeah, it is a mixture of the good from those machines coming together and creating something new. Um, yeah. Would it be possible to add a PTC heater by myself to raise the temperature of the bed up to 60? So ambient temperature should be around 60. Once you get the bed up to 100 degrees, you'll be able to print ABS fine. There are zero issues with printing ABS. As far as adding an extra heater, the only reason you'd want to add that that heater to the chamber is if you wanted to go beyond 60 degrees ambient, and that then becomes more of an extensive mod. It's not something we also recommend a lot of people do, to be honest. It's not it's not the safest mod either. Adding a heater like that to your printer, you would also need to change the hot end to be water cooled. The extruder motor would also need some sort of cooling there as well, but that's more for printing large nylon or large polycarbonate parts. So at the moment, the printer is capable of printing nylon and polycarbonate, just smaller parts close to the bed, where you're less likely to see those issues from printing large. Um, yeah, as far as ABS goes, if you're going to be printing ABS, uh, a, this is definitely a workhorse for ABS. You won't have any problems printing big ABS parts or ABS across the print plate. So is there any extra travel on the X or Y that would allow for the calibration camera to be permanently fixed? Um, so I don't think I don't think there is any extra space for the calibration camera to be permanently fixed. The way the camera works is that it's got a magnet underneath it, so it sticks onto the print platform. Um, it's available when you need it. Um, the calibration tool itself is more of is a tool that you would use when you need it. I can't imagine you using it often. Once you have got everything calibrated, um, you don't need it to necessarily be there. Again, adding it in a permanently mounted position, um, it would essentially mean increasing X and Y to the point where, again, it would just increase costs too much because you're adding space for something that big, but the extra space is going to be a lot bigger, if that makes sense. Um, so it's just a bit more efficient to have that tool be a separate tool that you can plug in and use when you need to use it. Um, right. So uh, yeah, the servo is super high quality. We've done probably close to 10,000 switches on it now. Zero issues. We actually bought a spare expecting it to maybe break or something, but we haven't had to use it at all. It's the original servo that we've still got in the machine and we're still using. So we're super happy with the servo, and yeah, you shouldn't have any problems with the servo at all. Um, are you using high tension or low tension on the Core XY tensioning system, or is this adjustable self-tensioning? So the way tensioning works is you just want to get it to guitar string tight. So um, when you manually move the idler pulley, uh, you don't want any slop in the belt. As far as tightening it goes, it is a manual. There's no auto tensioning. It is a manual thing where you would want to just loosen the bolts, pull the belt through, pull it through with a pair of pliers, and then tighten it back up again. Um, Again, you want to then just make sure that both belts have a um, similar sort of tension just by feel, and that's been good enough for us. It's worked really well. Not had any issues with doing it that way. Again, you don't want to go crazy with the belts. Again, for the most part, uh, tensioning of the belts is something that is um, unless you're absolutely pulling on the belt to the point where you're unhinging the idlers, it's something that should work well just by manually tensioning both belts to a reasonable level where, again, they're like a guitar string. Um, okay, so before the flexible build plate starts to warp, we've never actually had an issue with any of our flex plates warping. The The supplier we use is quite a high quality one, and the plate itself is spring steel, so it's very unlikely that it would warp. The magnetic layer that sits above the tooling plate as well is a high quality one. It's a high temperature resistant magnetic layer, so you shouldn't have any issues there with that bed warping at all. We've never experienced that personally, to be honest. Um, Attached will be as flat as the bed is flat. Yeah. Right. So custom parts which will need to be replaced under high use. So as far as the custom parts go, we're using a lot of aluminium and steel parts, so it's very unlikely that you'd need to replace them. The only part that does experience wear that is metal is the tool plates changing mechanism. So the way we're dealing with that is by using so the camshaft that sits on on the actual tool changer, that shaft with it, we're going to be doing that in aluminium. So with that being in aluminium and the tool plate being in stainless steel, that's a component that is designed to wear away over time, but not so much so that you need to replace it regularly. I mean, um, we'll be including some spares for sure, and they should last you for the lifetime of your printer. Um, for the most part, that aluminium dowel is the only thing that should ever really need replacing. Um, Perhaps over time, you could replace the bearings if you wanted to, the belts as well if you wanted to. Um, Off the top of my head, those are the things I'm thinking about. Of course, nozzles are something you'd want to replace every now and then. Again, if they become blocked, that's another consumable. Um, but yeah, beyond that, the custom parts themselves, you shouldn't need replacing. Yeah, they will be the tool plates and the tool changer master plate. We will have them available on our web store as well, if you wanted to have some spares just in case. But again, it's the stainless steel parts. It's unlikely you'll need to replace them. Again, it's just that aluminium dowel, and we'll include spares, so you shouldn't have any issues there. Um, okay. Yeah, we're planning to ship worldwide, absolutely, and we'll be shipping wherever DHL or FedEx can get to really. Uh, we'll have um, we'll have shipping. So for the most part, shipping is going to cost around $100 for the majority of people, unless you're living somewhere particularly obscure where the shipping is going to be a bit higher. But otherwise, we're shipping worldwide. If uh, if a FedEx truck can get to you, we'll be able to get your printer to you. Another question someone had was how long would it take after dispatch to get the printer? We'll be shipping with an express courier, so it would be a couple of days after dispatch you would get your machine, and we're so again I'm just going to quickly go over the timeline going forward as well. um, so after the Kickstarter ends, we'll be sending out surveys, and essentially at the moment we've pretty much got a design lock on the machine. If we hit the 300k target in the next 2 days, we'll also send out a poll which you can respond to, with regards to what that next stretch goal should be, and we can all vote on that. But beyond that, there is right now a design lock on the machine. We're just focused now on getting everything ready for production, and the deadline for that will be around the 20th of June. So that final week of June is once is when we want to essentially start placing orders for all of the manufacturing for all of the parts, and we're expecting manufacturing to be completed come the beginning of August. So in August, we hope to then be doing the final packaging and sending machines out. Whilst manufacturing is going on, we're also going to be working on the build manual, and you'll start seeing that be published. And we're also going to be working on slicer profiles, getting all of that ready so that once you do get the machine, you've got everything ready to go, essentially. Okay, so how many Proforge 3 printers have you sold and are out in the wild? So I think there are around 200 and something Proforge 3s in the wild. We didn't sell many of them. Um, for the most part, we wanted to carry on developing um, the platform itself. So after the Proforge 3, we put out the Proforge 3.5, which was an upgrade kit, which enhanced a lot of the features on the Proforge 3. It also brought the firmware up to Clipper as well. So the Proforce 3 originally was running Marlin firmware, and we wanted to move over to Clipper. We saw the advantages that Clipper brought in terms of speed, ease of use, and we saw Clipper as being the future of open source firmware. So um, sorry if you're a fan of Marlin, but we like Clipper, and that's what we wanted to go with, and it's what we're going to be going with now. And the Proforge 4 now is the Proforge 3.5 if we could design it from the ground up with a tool changer. And yeah, we're hoping to not just sell the Proforge 4 itself, but also have the Proforge 4 as a 3D printer platform going forward. So you'll be seeing over the next few years as more and more things come out in the 3D printing world. So such as the beacon scanner, um, potentially if there's a newer control boards, newer Raspberry Pis, newer motors, newer technologies that do come out, the Proforge 4 will essentially remain as a platform for adding those um, updates, those hardware updates, software updates to this printer, rather than seeing a Proforge 5 or a Proforge 6. The Proforge 4 is really what we want to have as our platform going forward. So so getting the Proforge 4 is definitely a long-term investment into not just a printer but a platform that you can then build on as the industry moves forward. And it being an open source machine is our goal. It is what our goal was right from the beginning with this machine in particular. Um, so yeah, so you definitely will be able to mix and match features of a print with different nozzle sizes, different nozzle types, different materials, of course. I think there's a print on the Kickstarter which shows where we've printed the infill with a 0.8 millimeter nozzle and the external walls with a 0.2 millimeter nozzle. So you can get that external detail and then use a different nozzle size to do the infill with faster and make it a lot more solid. That's going to depend on the slicer you use. So with Cura, that's something we definitely know is possible. Process slicer, super slicer, we'll need to look into that, but I'm pretty sure it should be something that should be possible. Um, Printing with like an infinite mode. So I assume you mean that's when if a spool of filament were to run out on one tool head, could you then just switch over to the next tool head and have that print carry on? Absolutely, that's one of the benefits of having a tool changer system like ours, where you can just swap over. And again, that's just a matter of putting that into the software to say, oh, when the filament runs out, switch to the next, carry on printing with the next tool head. Um, so yeah, I think if that's what you mean by infinite mode, yeah, that's definitely possible. Um, are the tool head cables going to be inside the top or outside the top? Some kind of or something. Yep. So with the cables, they sit on the outside of the printer with the enclosure on. So the enclosure design is changing slightly to make it a little bit more easier for those cables to slide in and out. Um, so the way that it currently works is that that cable gets pulled in through just one side of the enclosure panel, and then once it goes back to dock, the printhead moves to its Y position, and then down to its X position. So it pushes that cable out. We're working on getting um, some sort of spring steel reinforcement or some sort of reinforcement to guide those cables. Currently, we're using the PTFE tubes, which work okay, but there's definitely a better solution out there for managing those cables with the enclosure on. Um, Okay, so yeah, I use Simplify 3D. They typically have all printers they support in-house for testing and software development purposes. We, a company, look to provide units to this company to use in developing their software. We're open to it, definitely. We're still quite a small company, so we're going to be pretty selective about where we send units going forward. Um, but that's something else that you can expect to see once we get production units going, you'll be able to see YouTubers hopefully getting our machine and building the machine from the kit and creating content with our machines as well. Okay. Uh, so as far as quality goes when printing fast, so that was essentially our max speed and what would
I guess being acceptable quality, I guess, is going to be different for everyone. As far as it being a prototype part that you can crank out very quickly, I think it's fairly acceptable. Of course, you can slow it down and still get uh, a, a cleaner print fast, not as quickly, but still relatively fast. You've also got to bear in mind that our printer is not just a high-speed printer, it's also a high-speed tool changing printer. That inherently is going to add weight to the gantry, just having that tool changer there and having that tool plate. So having those tool plates there is going to limit really how fast you can print. So there is definitely a trade-off with speed and usability there as far as like creating a high-speed tool changer goes. Something else that we are adding to the printer is two additional static cooling fans. So currently we're running just one large blower fan, and that's been working well so far. But I think we can push things much further with some static cooling, especially with PLA. That 13-minute benchy that you saw was done in ABS. ABS is a lot easier to print at higher speeds. PLA does require a lot more cooling, and that is something we are going to be adding. And you'll see static cooling. It's going to be something that's going to be available for everyone. It's not going to be an upgrade. It's something I think we can include with the machine because we see the value in it for printing PLA much faster with that additional cooling. Um, yeah, so ultimately, we just wanted to show what the max speeds the maximum so the speeds that we advertise uh, for the Proforge 4 is really what the system can achieve at absolute maximum. And at absolute maximum, I think we are quicker than the Bamboo Labs machine. As far as um, just raw speed, Um, but as far as printing and making that speed turning that high speed into high print quality is something we're going to be working towards without a doubt. And I think static cooling is something that's going to help with that, and optimizing slicer settings, optimizing those profiles is also something that's going to help with that. But yeah, again, yeah, definitely quicker than the bamboo with AMS switching materials. Yep. So again, the advantage of the tool changer with with not having to use a purge block and having the separate tool heads overall makes it a much faster machine uh, when printing multiple materials. So yeah, it's definitely it's a middle ground. It's a bit of everything. Um, yeah, and yeah, an awful lot less wasteful. Yeah, that is definitely something that the even with the prime tower, that's 20% of the weight of or the waste of material that you would see with um, another printer that needs to purge previous material from that same hot end. Um, even that is considerably more efficient, and we're working towards getting rid of that as well. So I think you've seen in the previous update, we released a render of um, the spring steel sleds that the tool heads are now going to be parking over, and that again should get rid of even that and just make everything a lot more efficient and a lot more faster in terms of multiple material printing, which is something we're very excited about. Yeah. Will fixed cooling fans mentioned be effective when not using the enclosure? Where would they be placed in the gantry? No, so they would still work with the enclosure on. We'll be releasing some renderings of it very soon. It's the cooling fan. So we've got two static cooling fans. They're going to be, I think, 75 millimeter blower fans. Going to have two of them because it's quite a large printer, and we want to cover the y-axis. So they'll be sat on the right side of the printer, so the side that has the touchscreen on. They'll be sat right there at the top near the belt, and they'll be sat at an angle with a duct on them blowing air um, across the gantry. Again, we'll release some renders so you can take a look, so you can take a better look of what they look like. Okay, I have bamboos and they are great. Oh, hi, Aled from 3D Loot Lab. I have bamboos and they are great, but a big difference I see is the Proforge seems to have about double the flow and has quad motors. Yeah, so definitely those quad motors definitely help with speed, and not just speed, but also positioning. We also noticed that with having quad motors set up, um, we did not skip a single step on our prototype at all. Once we established what our max acceleration values and our max speeds were at those accelerations, we did not experience any skipping of steps. And I think a big reason for that is having quad motors, having 48 volts also run through those motors as well. Again, it just gives that additional torque, that additional power, that additional comfort in knowing that your printer is not going to skip steps. And I think that is probably the future going forward. The evolution of Core XY is quad Core XY now, uh, not just for speed but also for reliability. Um, yep, saving filament is pretty important. Yep. Yeah, so I think there are a few other printers, a few other IDEX printers that use spring steel sleds as well. We also want to see if we can add a silicon tip over that spring steel sled. We just need to get in touch with our supplier there and figure out tooling costs and what the overall cost is going to be for that. Again, I think someone mentioned that having just bare spring steel sleds might cause some wear on brass nozzles. So having that layer of silicon there for that additional protection is something we're actively looking at implementing as well. View your fan placement. Just describe if you look at BL Ox fan, they are overgrown PLA using that. Um, we'll again we'll have a look at what sort of performance we get with the fans. The fans also should be controllable in software as well. So if you find that there's too much cooling going on there, you can reduce the power of those fans as well, or leave them completely off because it's just again with those static cooling fans, it's more about providing it's more about allowing the printer to reach its full potential. By adding those fans, those additional fans, it means that you'll be able to print PLA, in particular PLA, much quicker than if you had just that single blower fan spinning. So you might find that you don't always need to use those extra fans, but they are there. They are going to be there for when you've got a print where can I half the time on this? Can I print this even faster? Um, you've got that additional cooling power there if you need it. Um, yeah, printing PLA. Yeah, ideally with PLA, you don't. You can also unhinge the top of the enclosure, so that that top actually is on hinges. It opens up all the way, and it doesn't need to be propped up. It has stoppers on the back, so it sits vertically up. Or you can just remove that top as well if you are printing PLA. But yeah, you do want some airflow in the machine. The fans will be pulling air from outside of the printer into the enclosure if you do have the side panels installed. Yep. So we'll be able to add control, yeah, on the filter in the enclosure. Yep, the filter fan is controllable as well, so you can have that at full tilt or at half power or off. That's completely controllable. Um, Cylinders on the top to keep it open will be helpful. Yeah. So the top panel is you can open it up and it will stay open. There are some supports. Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap this up now. Again, if you have any more questions, please post them. Post them on the Kickstarter. We're constantly looking, constantly checking that and replying there. There's our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram. There's also the Discord page. Um, we're available 24/7. Um, Whenever you need us. Any more questions, please please do ask us. Again, your questions get us thinking about things that we can add to improve the printer as well. And a lot of what we're doing isn't just about here is the printer and use it as we say. We want this printer to be something that the community helps us build uh, and and is and is a printer that belongs to everyone and not just us. But yeah, I think that's everything. An update will be going out in the next few hours with some renders. And again, just going over a few more things, such as the shipping and just getting it all there in writing so you can read through it at your own time. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time as well. Appreciate you guys coming along and asking us questions. Um, and yeah, have a great Sunday wherever you are. All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.